Just married your brother. You're pathetic. That's the text that lit up my phone at 2:13 a.m. Same woman I'd shared 20 years of my life with, now standing under neon Vegas lights in a cheap white dress, my own brother's arm around her waist. For a second, I thought it was a prank. Then the photo loaded, and my world stopped breathing. The bourbon in my hand didn't taste like bourbon anymore. It tasted like iron, like blood I refused to spit out. Every muscle in my body wanted to break something, call someone, do anything. Instead, I typed 2 words. Good luck. And then I put the phone down. Not because I was calm, because I was done. Sometimes, the most dangerous man in the room is the one who doesn't explode. If you've ever stayed silent when everything inside you was burning, subscribe. You'll want to hear what came next. The text still burned on my screen, and the silence felt heavier than the bourbon in my hand. I checked the clock, 2:47 a.m. The fridge hummed like an old pickup idling in winter. Streetlights spilled a thin strip of gold across the kitchen floor, like crime scene tape nobody bothered to put up. I slowed my breathing the way my high school coach taught us before a big play. Count it in, count it out, keep your head. My fingers tightened around the glass until the ice knocked the sides. I thought about calling her. I thought about calling him. Then I pictured the circus that would follow, shouting, excuses, more lies. That's how you lose the next day before it starts. So I didn't call anyone. I stood there in my own kitchen, boots planted, listening to the quiet work of a house I paid for. And I made the only call that mattered. I called myself into survival mode. By habit, my mind reached for the life I knew. Saturday breakfasts, eggs, toast, a joke about the burnt edges, the radio playing oldies while we argued about nothing and pretended it was something. The garage, my sanctuary, shelves lined tight, sockets in order, everything where it belonged because I put it there. On the stairwell, our 20th anniversary photo smiled back like a postcard from a town that never really existed. I remembered mowing straight lines in the yard, the neighbor giving a thumbs up, the dog that used to sleep at my feet. It was the rhythm of a man who did the right things and thought that made him safe. But standing in that gold slice of streetlight, I saw the truth I'd refused to look at. Order isn't the same as honesty, and routine can hide a lot of ugly. All those neat rows, garage tools, calendar reminders, polite smiles, were just blinds, and they'd been pulled shut for a long time. If the house can keep humming, so can I. I sat at the table, opened the laptop, and did what a man does when the roof leaks. You fix the roof. Bank portal up, new password, notes app open. Keep it simple, keep it clean. I canceled the authorized cards one by one, watching the confirmations arrive like the click of wrenches finding the right size. Screenshot, file saved, move on. Capital One, Chase. Department store card that lived for holidays and never pulled its weight. Each remove user felt less like revenge and more like sweeping glass off the shop floor. Basic safety before you bleed. I wrote Step 1, money, on a sticky note and pressed it to the edge of the screen, a small yellow flag at the top of the hill. My heartbeat steadied to the pace of useful work. Then came the moment that sealed it. I hovered, I breathed, I clicked remove user, and a door that needed closing finally shut. Next job, the perimeter. I called a 24-hour locksmith and flipped on the porch light. The bulbs hummed. The driveway looked honest in that hard white glow. I dragged 2 black trash bags to the front, her winter coats, his and hers slippers that never quite matched, perfume that never smelled like home. No drama, no speeches, just sorting parts into piles. The doorbell camera came alive with its tiny chime, the red ring blinking like a sentinel. I checked every window latch the way I checked the torque on lug nuts, one by one, no shortcuts. The locksmith's van rolled up quiet, a big guy in a beanie nodding like he'd seen this movie before. He worked fast. I handed him cash. He handed me new keys still warm from the machine. When I turned that fresh deadbolt, it answered with a clean, final click you feel in your chest. That sound wasn't about shutting someone out. It was about letting myself in. This house was mine again. With the doors squared away, it was time to square the record. I searched for a divorce attorney with a backbone and found Margaret Collins. 5-star reviews, no fluff. I booked 9:30 a.m. and started building the file. Scan the Vegas photo, save the text, pull bank statements, highlight the withdrawals that never matched our grocery list. I kept my coffee black and the printer hot. Every page I stacked felt like bracing a wall before the storm. Margaret's assistant emailed forms. I signed them without writing a novel in the margins. No "how could you" paragraphs. No therapy on paper. Facts only. Dates, amounts, messages. The kind of truth a judge can hold. I attached the evidence and typed one plain subject line that carried all the weight I needed it to. Grounds, adultery plus bigamy. I hit send. The message whooshed out like a nail gun shot sealing a frame. And for the first time that night, I knew tomorrow wouldn't own me. I'd own it. After hitting send to Margaret, the house exhaled, and so did I. I made coffee the way I always do: scoop, pour, wait, then pulled the curtains. Dew clung to the grass like tiny mirrors, a thin fog lifting off the yard. At the table, the second chair sat empty, the stir spoon resting beside a clean mug that wouldn't be used today. I opened my pocket notebook and started a list in block letters. Call credit union, print statements, change garage keypad, check camera footage. Call mom? I wrote it last, then stared at it. She'd want the whole story, then she'd make it about forgiveness and church and give it time. Time wasn't the tool I needed. I needed a wrench. I drew a slow line through "call mom" and kept going. The coffee steamed. The house hummed. I wasn't running from the day. I was walking toward it with both hands free. I hadn't finished my second sip when the porch cam chimed. 2 officers on the step, cruiser idling at the curb, exhaust ghosting in the cool air. I opened the door halfway. "Morning, sir," the older one said. "We got a call. Your wife says she's locked out." His partner's eyes scanned the foyer, landing on the packed bags by the wall. I kept my voice level. "She doesn't live here." I handed over my phone, Vegas photo on the screen, the text below it like a stamp you can't peel off. They read without interrupting. The younger officer shifted, cleared his throat. The older one looked back to me, careful, measured. I nodded toward the framed deed on the entry table with my name solo, date clear. "This is my house," I said, not louder, just truer. "My name is on the deed." The radio on his shoulder crackled to life, a clipped voice asking for status, and the moment stretched thin. The senior officer read the text again, slower this time, as if every word had weight he could feel in his hands. Suspicion drained from his face, replaced by something closer to respect, the kind a man gives another when he sees a job he wouldn't want to do done clean. The younger cop nodded at the bags. "Those hers?" I kept it simple. "Everything that's not mine." The radio popped and hissed, the dispatcher asking if they needed backup. The old cop keyed the mic without taking his eyes off me. "No breach. Civil matter." Then, to me, steady as bedrock. "Sir, this is a civil dispute. We're not forcing entry." The air in the entryway warmed a few degrees. I thanked them, not for choosing sides, but for recognizing a boundary when they saw one. They tipped their hats, stepped back into the morning, and the cruiser rolled away. The house went quiet again, like a field after thunder. Silence didn't last. The phone lit with unknown caller, then another, then voicemail stacking up like junk mail. I let them pile. Curiosity is a trap. Experience knows better. I finally played the latest, her voice tight, rehearsed. "You're ruining my life. You're being cruel. We can fix this if you just..." Click. I saved the file for the record and kept my thumb off the redial. Men my age know this loop. The plea, the spin, the bait for a fight you can't win because the rules change mid-sentence. I opened my settings and did something simple, something sane. I turned on Do Not Disturb, whitelisted my lawyer and my boss, and put the phone face down. The device still buzzed on the wood like a trapped wasp, then settled. I poured fresh coffee. Out the window, the dew had burned off. You don't have to answer every alarm to know which fire matters. It wasn't 5 minutes before a familiar SUV angled high on the curb, engine still running. My mother climbed out first, coat half-zipped, mission in her eyes. Ethan hung back by the passenger door, hands in pockets, studying the mailbox like it had answers. The doorbell rang too long, the tone that says, "I live here," from people who don't. I took my time, slid the chain, and opened the door just a few inches. Mom leaned in with that same Sunday school smile that always came before orders. "Mark, let us in. We can talk like adults." Behind her, Ethan kept his gaze on the porch floorboards. I saw the knot he used to pick at as a kid. History in one glance. I didn't raise my voice. "We can talk right here." I let the chain speak for me. The house stood at my back, solid as a good plank. On the wall by the entry, the list waited. First line already checked off. From the crack in the door, Mom went straight to the line she's used since Little League. "Open the door, Mark. We'll talk like adults." Her smile was tight, not friendly, like a ribbon pulled too hard. Ethan finally lifted his eyes. "Come on, man. We're family." The word hit the chain between us like a dull hammer. I kept my voice flat. "Family doesn't stab you in the back." Mom took a breath to scold, the way she always does when the story doesn't go her way. I didn't give her the space. "We're not having this inside." Ethan tried one more time, hands out, palms up, the old peacekeeper pose that always meant I'd be the one to give in. Not today. I met his eyes, let the history sit there, and ended it clean. I closed the door. The chain scraped dry across the slot, a hard, final sound that said more than I could. The latch set. Silence won. That sound pulled a film reel from the back of my head. High school field in fall, lights buzzing, breath white in the dark. Ethan took the hits, and I took the blocks, brother to brother, clearing lanes no one noticed. He got the trophy. I fixed the loose bolts on the bleachers after the crowd went home. When Dad died early, Mom's eyes looked to me like I was a bank and a bodyguard rolled into one. So I worked, paid, hauled, and smiled. I told myself that's what big brothers do. Build the scaffold so the young one can climb. But scaffolds don't topple you. People do. I stood in the hallway now, older and clear, and said it in a place no one could argue with, inside my own mind. I hadn't raised a man. I'd raised a shadow bigger than me, and when shadows learn to want, they learn to take. That debt, paid in full tonight. Clarity needs proof. I sat at the desk and opened the laptop again. Emails first, dates, subjects, attachments. Then the bank site, 18 months of statements pulled into a neat stack. My highlighter lived where it always does, top drawer on the right, cash withdrawals that didn't match our grocery runs. Hotel charges 2 states over when I was clocking overtime. A pattern blooming like oil on water. Bright, ugly, undeniable. I searched messages, screenshotted what mattered. Her plans, his promises, the jokes at my expense. The numbers added up slow, then all at once. Over 10 grand, siphoned a little at a time. That's not an accident. That's a plan. The anger rose, hot and honest, but I stayed at the workbench, one careful cut at a time. Each file saved to the red folder labeled facts. Not stories, not feelings. Facts. When the last total cleared the screen, I leaned back, breathed out, and felt the floor of the room get solid. I dialed before the doubt could get cute. Margaret answered like she was already in the fight. I read the numbers, the dates, the messages, short, clean, no decoration. She didn't flinch. "That's financial misconduct," she said. "And with the Vegas ceremony, we're talking bigamy exposure." We set the appointment for morning. "Bring everything," she added. "We'll file fast." I printed the statements and clipped them into a red binder, the same color as that folder on my desktop. Tabs labeled bank, messages, photo. It felt like loading a toolbox before a job you know you can finish. "Mark," she said before we hung up, voice like sandpaper and silk, "this is a slam dunk case. Keep your cool. Let the paper talk." I closed my eyes, let those words settle, then opened them and went back to work. Gentle reminder to the men listening. When your life leaks, grab a wrench, not a megaphone. Do the next right thing, then the next. The house had work left in it, and so did I. I wiped the counters until they squeaked, folded the laundry into square, quiet stacks, and carried a last box to the door. No music, no TV, just the sound a clean place makes when it remembers how to breathe. I walked past the spare bedroom and flicked the switch off, a small goodbye to a story that didn't survive the edit. In my room, I set the alarm for 6, slid the phone face down, and let the dark do its job. Sleep came like a decision, not a mercy. Steady, earned, no dreams, no phone buzzing me awake for someone else's emergency. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't rehearsing arguments or building speeches I'd never give. I'd built something better, a plan. Tomorrow had a name, a time, and a binder. I pulled the covers up, stared at the ceiling once, and then I was gone. Morning came with a checklist and a purpose. Margaret's office smelled like coffee and oak, the kind of place where stories end and facts begin. I set the red binder down. She opened it like a mechanic lifting a hood. Nevada, she said, tapping the Vegas photo, means bigamy exposure. We don't chase that today. We build the clean lane, adultery, financial misconduct, exclusive use of the home. No speeches, no character essays, dates, amounts, messages. She outlined the plan like a field diagram. I answer only what's asked. We submit exhibits in order. Let the paper do the talking. Each step lowered the heat and raised the ground under my feet. She slid a form across, limited power of attorney, so she could file on the spot. My hand didn't shake. I signed my name in the same block letters I use on tool drawers. The pen clicked shut. A small sound, a big shift. I walked out lighter, not because it hurt less, but because the load finally had handles. The drive home was short. The fallout was not. By lunch, Lisa posted her My Truth essay. Soft lighting, tearful eyes, paragraphs about feeling unseen. 2 hours later, Ethan uploaded a black and white selfie, captioned, "Found my soulmate," the kind of line that plays well until the lights come on. Old neighbors liked. A cousin shared. High school friends argued in the comments like they were rerunning prom night. I felt the tug to answer, to quote, to set every record straight. Instead, I did the opposite. I screenshotted quietly. I noted timestamps. I made a list of who boosted what. When an uncle messaged, "Bro, say something," I told him I would, in court. Let them narrate. Let them get confident. People write faster when they think you're not reading. By dinner, the narrative had momentum, but so did my file. I muted the notifications, slid the phone away, and let the trap stay open. Patience isn't passive. Sometimes it's bait. Right after sunset, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen since college. Roger. He works in cybersecurity now, a calm voice who never wastes a word. "Saw the posts," he said. "You okay?" "Working the plan," I answered. "Good," he said. "Then here's your next move. Download your Facebook data, full archive, messages included." He texted a step-by-step, no jargon, just taps and clicks. I followed it like a recipe. Request file, wait for the email, verify, download. The progress bar crawled the way time does when you want it to hurry. Then the zip landed. Heavy, final. I unzipped, opened the messages folder, and there it was. Years in plain text, searchable. Roger's last instruction was simple. Read everything, don't react, flag only what helps. I thanked him the way men do, in short sentences that mean more than they say. Then I scrolled to 2 names that used to mean home and pressed enter. The past lit up like a runway. The first hits were cheap, jokes about my routines, my dad playlists, the way I label bins in the garage. Then came the logistics. Lunch breaks that were anything but. Hotel stays that lined up with my overtime. A calendar that told a different truth than the one on our fridge. The tone wasn't love. It was a plan. "She'll never notice," one message said. "He lives by checklists." Another. "Friday. Transfer from joint. Call it groceries." I felt the heat rise, the honest, old-fashioned kind that makes you want to lift something heavy or break something light. I kept reading. Vegas talk. Dream wedding. And then the line that put a number on betrayal. "Can't wait till we take him for everything." There it was. Intent in black and white. I didn't shout. I bookmarked. I tagged the file. The anger did its job, woke me up, but didn't grab the wheel. When you finally see the blueprint of the hit, the counterbuild gets simple. I opened a new album and named it the only thing that fit, facts. No memes, no paragraphs, just screenshots with clean captions, dates, amounts, exact quotes, the Vegas photo, the withdrawals, the messages where they mocked the husband who kept the lights on. I set the album to public and pressed post. No immediate victory music played. That's not how truth works. It sits there, plain and patient, while people decide whether to look away. I closed the laptop and stepped outside. The air had that late afternoon bite Ohio saves for men who mow their own lawns. I walked the block once, hands in pockets, the way I used to cool down after a pickup game. Behind me, the phone started buzzing. Friends, coworkers, a neighbor who'd seen enough. I didn't sprint back. I let it ring. I'd said my piece without saying a word. Out on the sidewalk, my feet felt steady. Inside, the album did what anger never could. It held. By the time the post had stretched its legs, the neighborhood had too. At the grocery store, I caught the hush behind me in the cereal aisle, the kind you hear when your name walks in before you do. One shelf over, a kid asked his mom why adults fight. She told him, "Sometimes they stop." At the coffee shop, the owner gave me an extra splash and a nod that said more than a paragraph. The regulars didn't pry. They just left space at the end of the counter like a seat at a fire. On my phone, old friends sent 2-word texts, "Men understand, stay strong. With you." I stood under the awning, watched the morning bustle roll past, and felt something I hadn't felt since the night split open. Room to breathe. Not victory, not yet. Just a little lift in the chest, a small clean place inside all the noise. I realized my face had done it on its own. I smiled. Relief never lasts long in a fight. That afternoon, my boss called me into the wood-paneled office where raises and layoffs have the same chair. He shut the door gently, the way good men do before bad news. "Mark," he said, "I got a call from Lisa's father. He says you're unstable and harassing the family. He suggested I put you on leave." He looked over his glasses and waited. I handed him a short stack, the Vegas photo, the text, the dates, no theatrics, just the same red binder logic. He read, his jaw set. He slid the papers back and leaned in. "I've worked with you 12 years. I don't take personnel advice from angry in-laws." He paused, a deliberate beat that felt like a hand on a shoulder. "Take a few days anyway. Paid. Handle your life. Your projects are covered." Power is quiet when it's real. I shook his hand, said thank you, and left with my dignity standing up straight. The house slept easy until it didn't. At 2 a.m., the porch cam pinged, and the grainy feed painted 2 figures in washed-out gray. Ethan's outline was unmistakable, shoulders forward, guilt hunched into a hoodie. Lisa wobbled behind him, crying the way a person cries when the bottle's doing the talking. Their whispers slid under the door like cold air. A garden trowel scraped the window frame, clumsy, desperate. I felt that old heat rise, reached for the doorknob, then stopped. Control isn't a feeling, it's a plan. I opened the app and hit the siren. The alarm screamed, the porch lights popped to full daylight. They jumped like raccoons caught in a trash can and bolted sideways through the hedges. Tires chirped. Silence returned in jagged pieces. I saved the clip, labeled it clean, and watched the timestamp settle on the screen. It wasn't heroics. It was simple. Protect the perimeter, protect the plan. Tomorrow would have paperwork. Tonight had a boundary. Morning made good on the threat. I drove to the station with a flash drive and a calm voice. The officer at the desk had the efficient kindness of someone who's heard every story twice. I signed the incident form, attached the video, and read my statement once out loud, the way my father taught me to check work you'll put your name on. The case number printed across the top like a clean header. "Attempted trespass," the officer said, tapping keys. "If anything else happens, you call. Keep records." I nodded, because keeping records had already saved my life once. Outside, the sky was the honest kind of blue Ohio wears when it wants people to get things done. I texted Margaret the file and the case number. She replied with a thumbs up and a time. No speeches, just next steps. The officer's pen stopped halfway across the page. "You handled this clean," he said. On the drive home, the wipers kept time with a question I hadn't asked out loud. What kind of man doesn't fight back? The bourbon voice in my head whispered the old answer, the weak one. But another voice, quieter, said something else, the one who already won. I gripped the wheel until the leather creaked. Revenge has a short half-life. Proof lasts forever. At the next red light, I saw my reflection in the windshield. Tired eyes, steady hands. The light turned green. I didn't floor it. I just moved forward. If you've ever been called weak for walking away, keep watching. The real fight starts now. Back home, I splashed water on my face and met the man in the mirror. The beard showed more gray than last winter. The eyes looked like they'd learned a new language overnight. I heard Dad again, the way he sounded under Friday night lights. "Stand up straight, son." I did. Shoulders back, chin leveled. I breathed deep until it reached the bottom of my ribs. "You are not a victim," I said. Not a speech, just a fact that needed air. I thought about the boy who blocked for his brother, the husband who kept the lights on, the man who put himself last because it seemed noble. Noble doesn't mean blind. I touched the red binder on the counter like a talisman, then let my hand fall away. Labels matter, and I was done wearing the wrong one. This wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about living right. I turned from the glass and walked back into my day. The question from that red light followed me home. The mirror gave it an answer: stand up straight. I cleared the dining table and opened the red binder like a toolbox. Color tabs first. Blue for bank statements, yellow for messages, green for photos, white for receipts. I slid sticky notes onto the kill shots. Dates circled, amounts underlined, quotes boxed in red. Then I practiced answers out loud, the way you rehearse a play you don't want to star in. "Yes, Your Honor." "Correct." "That is my signature." "No, I did not authorize those charges." Short, clean, true. I timed my breathing to the rhythm of turning pages. Inhale proof, exhale noise, jacket pressed, shoes shined, phone on silent, except for Margaret. When the stack stood squared to the table's edge, I closed the cover and felt the magnet catch. A small snap, like a lid sealing fresh paint. I whispered what needed saying to no one but myself. "Ready." And for once, the word didn't feel like a wish, it felt like a fact. Courthouses have their own weather. Cold benches, recycled air, the steady tick of a clock that doesn't care who wins. I sat with the binder on my knees and watched minute hands behave. Across the hall, Lisa and Ethan pretended the floor was interesting. No eye contact, just the choreography of people who gambled with a life and lost the chips. Margaret arrived the way good counsel does, early and steady. She squeezed my shoulder once, the same way a coach does before 4th and inches. "Breathe, paper over drama," she said, and I did. A bailiff's shoes clicked down the corridor, unhurried, inevitable. Somewhere, a copier coughed. The door to our courtroom held a brass handle polished by other people's stories. When the clerk pushed it open, the hinges gave a low, tired groan, and the room beyond brightened a fraction. Margaret stood first. I followed. The clock on the wall didn't flinch. The moment didn't rush. It simply arrived, and we stepped into it. Opposing counsel went up like a man auditioning for sympathy. "Depression," he began, palms spread, "a temporary lapse in judgment." He talked about comfort turning into connection, about two good people finding light in a dark time. He called it a tragic, beautiful mistake, the kind of phrase that photographs well and lives poorly. I kept my eyes forward and my mouth shut. No sighs, no head shakes, just the stillness of a man who's carried drywall and knows when talk slows the work. Lisa dabbed a dry eye. Ethan stared at the table like it owed him something. The attorney gestured at nothing and everything, building a fog bank where facts should be. Margaret's pen ticked once on her legal pad. I thought of every bolt I've tightened twice because the first snug isn't enough. When the speech finally exhausted itself, the room held a quiet that felt honest again. I didn't give the performance an audience. I gave it a wall. Margaret rose without clearing her throat. She didn't need volume. She had sequence. Exhibit A, authenticated screenshots of messenger threads, names, timestamps, locations. She read the line like a carpenter pencils a cut. "Can't wait till we take him for everything." Exhibit B, bank statements, withdrawals labeled groceries at the same hour a hotel in Indiana charged our card. Exhibit C, the Vegas chapel photo, metadata intact, Opposing counsel tried to slip a hand on the brake. Objection, privacy. Overruled, the judge said. Not bored, just done. Margaret kept the rhythm. Foundation, connection, point. She didn't accuse. She demonstrated. Dates locked to times, messages locked to money, a story that told itself because it had receipts. I sat still and let the structure carry me like a well-built bridge, no sway, no creak. When she finished, she capped her pen and looked at the bench like a job completed, not a victory won. The judge nodded once, and the air in the room shifted toward gravity. But I didn't know yet. Some storms wait outside the courthouse. The judge took off her glasses the way a parent sets down a tool. Carefully, because what's next requires bare hands. She turned to Ethan and asked it without dressing it up. "Mr. Anderson, is this a joke?" The gallery stopped breathing. Ethan's mouth opened, then thought better of it, then opened again. Nothing useful came out. He glanced at Lisa, then at the table, then at the exit sign as if it offered a different verdict. The judge didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "I don't often see cruelty documented by its authors," she said. "Today, I do." A kind of quiet took the room that you only hear on a still lake. No wind, no lies moving. Margaret rested her hand on the binder. I kept my posture, same as the mirror taught me. Ethan finally settled on silence, which, for once in his life, was the smartest thing he could choose. The gavel didn't fall yet, but something else did. Their story. The silence after the judge's question didn't last long. She turned to the clerk, to Margaret, to the stack of exhibits, and then laid it out clean. "The residence is premarital property," she said. "Exclusive possession to Mr. Anderson." The words landed like bolts set tight. Next, separate accounts remain separate. No splitting what I built before vows were made. Then the boundary I needed most, a temporary restraining order. No contact, no entry, no midnight visits with garden tools. The room felt sturdier, like someone finally shored up the beams. I watched Lisa swallow and Ethan look small for the first time since we were kids. The judge glanced at the Vegas photo, then added the twist that tightened every screw. Possible bigamy in Nevada will be referred for review. Margaret didn't smile. She doesn't celebrate unfinished work. But she did tap the binder once, our quiet victory bell. I exhaled through my nose, slow, steady. Not the end. But the ground was mine. And the moment I stepped outside, someone tried to take it back. Courtroom doors opened into a different weather system. Hot air, hot voices, the kind of storm families make when truth gets public. My mother started first, finger pointed like she was calling me in from the yard. "This is your fault, Mark." Lisa's mother fired back, chin high. "Your son raised a liar." Phones came out, thumbs hit record, hair went wild, and words flew the way they do when people are performing their pain. Ethan hovered, the old peacekeeper with nothing to keep. I felt that old gravity tug. Explain, defend, fix. Then I remembered why we were here and who I'm responsible for. I turned my shoulders away from the flash of cameras and toward the stairs. Margaret matched my pace, heels steady, voice low. "We don't attend every fire," she said. I kept my eyes on the sidewalk like it was a runway out of a war zone. At the bottom step, I did the only thing that made sense. I walked. And the moment I stepped outside, someone tried to take it back. We crossed the street into afternoon light that stretched our shadows thin and long, two outlines moving steady past a newspaper box and a hot dog cart. Sirens muttered somewhere far off, city noise smoothing back into a normal day. Margaret checked her watch and finally let herself say it. "Good job not reacting." It sounded like a metal pinned where no one could see. I nodded, not because I needed praise, but because the discipline had cost me something and I wanted it on record in my own head. Cars rolled by, indifferent. The courthouse behind us shrank to a building with windows instead of a battlefield. I felt the first clean breath since the gavel-less verdict. "Round one," I said, almost to myself. "Done." Not a boast, an inventory. We stopped at the curb. The crosswalk chirped. My phone vibrated with new messages I didn't have to read right now. For the first time, the day felt like it belonged to me again. Home has a way of telling you the truth. The kitchen was spotless, stainless steel shining back a man who looked like he'd finally sat down a heavy box. But the quiet had edges. In the laundry nook, I found one of her flats kicked behind the dryer, a single shoe with nothing to match it. I set it in a cardboard box with a winter scarf and a photo frame that kept falling face down. No ceremony, no speeches, just sorting parts that don't fit this machine anymore. I taped the lid and wrote donation in block letters, the way I label socket sets. When the tape screeched and the flap sealed, it sounded like a tiny door closing in a big house. I carried the box to the trunk and felt something unclench. There's a kind of grief that lives in objects. There's also relief in sending them on. The day stayed empty, on purpose. Sometimes you clear a room before you rebuild it. The question was, what kind of man walks back into that room next? The next morning asked for company, but the simple kind. I walked to the corner coffee shop where the owner knows your order and your story only if you hand it to her. Sarah was at the end table, same wristwatch she's worn since the kids were small. She slid a donut across without a word, on the house, and let the chair across from her do the inviting. We watched steam lift off our cups like two people who've seen enough weather to respect quiet skies. She didn't pry. She asked about my truck, the Buckeyes, whether I ever fixed that squeaky hinge on the back gate. I answered, short, honest, and then gave her one piece from the middle of the mess. Court went our way, I said. Not over, but moving. She nodded like that's a language she speaks. Good, she said. Eat while it's warm. The donut wasn't fancy. It was perfect. For a minute, I remembered how simple good can be. After coffee with Sarah, I wanted a win I could feel in my legs. I laced up before the streetlights shut off and headed for the Scioto. Cool air, river dark as slate, the path a thin silver ribbon under the lamps. Springsteen in my ears, the old tracks that turn worry into rhythm. Step, breath, step, breath. First mile was stiff, second mile loosened the bolts. Third mile I remembered how to carry myself without carrying everything. The river kept me honest, the skyline stayed quiet, and my heartbeat settled into a steady drum I could trust. I wasn't outrunning anything. I was returning to something I'd misplaced. When the first slip of pink touched the clouds, I turned back toward home, sweat cooling, lungs clean. The porch light was still on when I reached the driveway. I clicked it off with one finger and stood there a second, hands on hips, smiling at nothing in particular. I'd made it back before sunrise. With daylight came tools. I taped off the trim and rolled a fresh coat on the front door. Deep blue, clean and honest. Swapped out the harsh bulbs for warm ones that make a room feel like it means it. Closet next. Shirts I don't wear, ties that only remember weddings and interviews, folded and boxed. The echo in the hallway softened. In the living room, I rehung Dad's photo the way he'd want. Straight, level, measured from the center. He's smiling at some joke we can't hear anymore. The place began to change temperature, not from the thermostat, but from attention. I patched that crack by the baseboard, tightened the hinge that's creaked since last fall, oiled the deadbolt so it turns like a promise kept. Nothing dramatic, just 100 small yeses to a life I want to live in. When I stepped back, the house breathed with me. Lights warm, edges true. I didn't say it out loud, but I felt it. Lighter. Then the phone rang, and the past wasn't done testing me. While the paint dried, my phone lit with a number I didn't know. I almost let it go to voicemail, then answered on muscle memory. Mark? A voice I recognized in a way I didn't enjoy. Cheryl. Not anger, not tears. Something in between. She said the word sorry, but dressed it in explanations. Pressure, mistakes, one thing led to another, and we never meant to hurt you. The script we all hear when people want a receipt for forgiveness they haven't earned. I let her talk for 30 seconds, long enough to see the shape of the road she wanted me on. I stared at Dad's photo while she circled. When she finally paused to breathe, I gave her the only gift I had that wouldn't cost me more time. I hope you find yourself, Cheryl. No heat. No door left open. Then I ended the call and blocked the number. The room went quiet again, and this time the quiet felt safe. Just when I thought the storm had passed, the phone buzzed again. Not her this time. Something else. You know when a project turns from patching to building. That afternoon I planted the for sale sign in the lawn, the stake sliding into the dirt with a clean, certain push. The agent walked through with a checklist and good shoes, nodding at the light, the paint, the simple lines. I'd already made the boxes I kept putting off. Photos wrapped, letters sorted, junk given to gravity in a trash bag. In the bedroom, a small plastic tub held the last of the memories worth keeping. 6 items, no more. The agent ran comps, talked timelines, pointed to a price that sounded like closure. We signed the listing papers at the kitchen counter where 1,000 breakfasts used to live. My pen made the same slow loops it had at the courthouse. When she left, the house felt like a clean deck. No cards, no tricks. That evening, the phone pinged with a showing request. I tapped accept and felt the countdown begin. The house was almost sold, but the past still had one key left. The neighborhood earned a proper farewell. I walked the sidewalk with a small box of tools, the kind of odds and ends a man collects. Extra screws, a level, a tape measure that always snaps back right. Tom from next door shook my hand like we'd just finished a job together. His lab barked twice, then leaned on my leg like dogs do when they pick sides without asking. The little girl from 2 houses down waved hard enough to move her ponytail. I told her to keep riding her bike in a straight line, and she laughed like that was a magic trick. I handed Tom my backup toolbox, old, dented, still true, and watched him take it the way men take gifts they understand. Back in the driveway, I stood with the remote in my palm and hit the garage door for the last time. It rolled down smooth, then sealed at the concrete with a soft kiss. Not a slam. A promise kept and finished. The garage door kissed the concrete, and the next door opened on wheels. I signed for a mid-size RV. Nothing flashy, just honest and tough, like a good pair of boots. I taped a big map of the U.S. to the interior wall, red pins stacked in the cup holder like small promises. I loaded the cabinets with simple gear, skillet, coffee press, duct tape, a first aid kit Dad would approve of. The playlist took 5 minutes and 20 years. Cash, Willie, Eagles, Springsteen, songs that know how men start over. I checked the tires, the fluids, the latches. I sat behind the wheel and let the quiet settle, the way you do before the first swing of a hammer. Then I turned the key. The engine caught with a low, certain growl, and the dash lights came alive. I eased out, blinkers steady, and felt the weight shift from what I'd carried to what would carry me. The street unspooled. The wheels rolled. But the road wasn't empty. Not yet. By the time I crossed into Indiana, a soft rain had sanded the world down to neon and puddles. I pulled into a gas station where the canopy buzzed and the coffee machine talked back. The attendant was the kind of man who knows the score without hearing the game. He pointed at my Ohio plates, asked about the Buckeyes, then drifted to baseball. Cubs hope, Cardinals grit, that one impossible catch from 11. I found myself laughing, easy and unguarded, like the sound belonged to me again. He topped off the washer fluid and wouldn't take a tip. I left one anyway by the register next to a glass jar for a Little League team. On the way out, the bell over the door made that old diner sound, and the rain eased up to a polite mist. I climbed back into the RV, wiped the windshield, and realized my shoulders had dropped an inch. Talking about nothing felt like something. I drove on. Missouri greeted me with a campsite tucked into dark pines and a sky that knew how to keep a secret. I built a small fire, the kind that doesn't brag, just crackle, glow, repeat. The RV settled behind me with soft clicks as the metal cooled. I opened a notebook and put down a few lines, printing slow, like a man relearning his own handwriting. I wrote about the map, the rain, the way gas stations can feel like churches if the coffee's hot and the talking's kind. A breeze moved through the trees and brought a clean pine scent sharp enough to clear the pipes. Somewhere, an owl asked a question it didn't care to answer. The pen paused over the paper, then found the sentence I'd been circling all day. Freedom has a smell. I underlined it once, closed the cover, and let the fire burn down to honest coals. The night held, and for once, I didn't need it to explain itself. Dawn found me climbing. The RV took the grades like a patient mule, steady and sure, while snow clung to the shady shoulders of the road like last year's excuses. The sky turned a braver blue with every mile. A simple guitar track filled the cabin. No lyrics, just clean notes that made room for thought. I watched the temperature drop and the horizon rise, white peaks sharpening like fresh blades. The heater ticked. The coffee steam curled. My hands were firm on the wheel, not tight. A switchback opened to a view that didn't apologize, and the sun broke through the windshield with a warmth that surprised a laugh out of me. Short, bright, unplanned. It felt like the first deep breath after a long swim. I pulled into town with mountain air in my lungs and a version of myself I recognized in the rear view. The map on the wall got a new pin. The road had given me back a piece I thought was gone. 2 days on the road, silence got loud enough to need a witness. Main Street had a bell over a glass door with the right kind of chime, and behind it, the kind of bookstore that still believes in paper. I stepped in, and the place smelled like cedar shelves and old stories. She looked up, brown eyes, hair tied back, a smile that didn't sell anything it couldn't deliver. "Looking for something?" she asked, voice soft but clear. I glanced at a shelf of dog-eared paperbacks, the kind that travel in glove boxes and backpack pockets. "Maybe," I said. "Maybe I'm looking for me." She laughed, not at me, with me, and pointed to a table of road memoirs and second chances. We talked about coffee and winter tires and which authors tell the truth without setting the page on fire. The bell rang again. Life went on around us. I bought a book that fit in my jacket and a bookmark that said, "Begin anywhere." When I left, the bell chimed once more, and so did something in me. The bell's echo from Mary's shop was still in my ears when we slid into a corner table with 2 mugs, hers mint tea, mine plain coffee cooling. The wood grain looked like river lines on a map. Mary asked the kind of questions that don't hunt for gossip, slow, open, giving you room to find your own answer. She listened more than she spoke, the way good mechanics do when an engine tells on itself. I told the story in pieces that mattered, the text, the plan, the courtroom, the walk away. I left out the parts that only hurt for sport. When I finished, she held my eyes for a beat that felt like a handshake. "You survived the right way," she said. "Not with noise, with work." The words landed softer than praise and deeper than sympathy. Something unclenched in my chest that couldn't be measured, only noticed. Outside, Main Street went about its ordinary life. Inside, my own life felt a notch truer. I hadn't said this out loud in years, maybe ever. Her sentence unlocked one of mine. I said out loud what most men my age store in the glove box. "I'm not afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of staying alone." Mary nodded like a person whose map once tore down the middle. She told me about her divorce, quiet, complicated, survivable, and the day she learned to sleep without the TV on. We traded small, honest stories, a forgotten anniversary, a blown timing belt on I-70, the dumb fight about paint colors that neither of us actually liked. We laughed in the soft way people do when they recognize a bruise. The room didn't lean in. It gave us space. No violins, no speeches, just 2 adults at a wooden table deciding that truth was safer than performance. When the cups were empty, I realized the weight I'd been carrying had shifted. It wasn't gone, but it rode easier. That's the thing about permission. You don't need much of it, just enough to breathe. Back in the RV, the phone lit up with a number that used to mean home. "Lisa, can we talk one last time?" I watched the text blink like a lure. My thumbs started writing a whole history, answers to questions she didn't ask, rows of facts that would only feed a fire. Then I stopped, deleted the paragraph, and typed 6 words that do the job without building a stage. "Please speak through my attorney only, no insult. No open door. Just a fence with a clear gate." I hit send and felt the urge to explain, "Reach for me," like an old habit. I let it pass. Boundaries aren't mean, they're maps. They tell you where you are and where you won't go again. A few minutes later, another buzz. Understood. No fireworks, no fresh wound. I saved the thread to the red folder and set the phone face down. That small sentence didn't feel small at all. It felt like keeping the wheel straight. And somewhere out there, I knew she'd read it. A week later, the envelope arrived, a weight you can feel before you read it. Court seal. My name correct. I sat at the dinette and opened it with the same pocket knife I use for everything that matters. The words lined up like studs in a straight wall. Property is ruled. Mine. Separate accounts remain separate. Opposing party pays legal fees. Temporary order extended on contact and access. No poetry, just law doing the quiet work of repair. I read it twice, once with my eyes and once with my pulse. Margaret's email chimed in a breath later. Congrats. File this. Forward any violations. I folded the letter along its crease and slid it into the red binder behind a new tab labeled Final. Then I just breathed. Not a victory scream. A long exhale that cleared out rooms I hadn't known were crowded. Some fights end with bells. The good ones end with paperwork. I closed the binder and felt the table stop vibrating. The next morning, the map pointed me east. I parked the RV near the cemetery where the oaks lean in and the wind respects the stones. Dad's name was right where I left it, black cut into gray, steady as ever. I brushed a few leaves aside and told him the short version, what they did, what I did, how the judge saw it, where the road had taken me since. I left out the noise and told him the facts he would have cared about, work done right, lines kept straight, no shortcuts. From my pocket, I pulled a small flag and set it in the grass at the corner of his stone, the way he used to set stakes before stringing a line. I kept my back straight, I said, and it wasn't a performance. It was a report. The breeze lifted, the oaks answered, and I felt the kind of approval you don't get from applause. I touched the cool granite once, then headed on. Leaving the cemetery, I followed the map west until the air got thin and honest again. Mary pointed me to a trail just outside town, switchbacks cut into red rock, pine shadows laying cool stripes across the path. We started slow, knees remembering, lungs catching up. The cold air bit in a way that felt like permission, and my heart found a steady, clean beat that didn't need fixing. At the overlook, the sandstone rose like a cathedral that never needed a roof. I took a photo, not for proof, just for the practice of keeping good things. No filter, no caption. Back on the trail, Mary didn't fill the quiet, and I didn't need her to. When we reached the lot, I pulled out my phone, looked at the picture, and texted it to myself. A small reward, delivered by my own hand. Not a trophy on a shelf. A reminder in a pocket that says, you chose this climb, and you made it. That night, we kept it easy. A pot of chili on the stove, butter melting into warm bread, a little jazz low enough to let conversation breathe. We talked about ordinary things, snow in April, stubborn porch lights, the worst cup of coffee each of us ever bought. She teased me about the labels in my toolbox. I admitted the labels sometimes keep me sane. The RV windows fogged just a bit, the way kitchens do when food and company land right. No fireworks, no confessions, just two people using small, steady words that hold. I remembered how many dinners I'd eaten on autopilot, TV loud enough to drown the gut. Tonight, the volume was human. When the bowls were scraped clean, I leaned back and felt a rare quiet settle, the kind that doesn't demand payment later. If you've lived long enough, you know peace when it shows up. You don't interrogate it. You set a place and let it sit. Peace is real, but so are ghosts. I dreamed the old front door swung open by itself, deadbolt useless, wind full of voices I used to answer. I woke in the RV to darkness and my own heartbeat counting high. Habit sent me to the lock first. Click. Solid. The camera light pulsed once, calm and red. The night outside was just night. I stood in the narrow aisle and let my breath slow like I had at 2:47 a.m. back in Ohio. The fear didn't own the place. It rented by the minute. I sat on the edge of the bed and said the facts out loud. Not a mantra, just maintenance. The door is locked. The phone is off. The plan is working. 10 minutes later, my shoulders unhooked and I lay back down. I didn't force sleep. I let it come like a truce I'd actually signed. That's when I knew something had changed. I didn't need a rescuer. I could rescue me. Morning made good on the promise. I called my mother first. We kept it short and warm. Weather, health, I'm okay. No autopsy of yesterday, no drafts for tomorrow. Then I set a boundary where it belonged. I told Ethan through the attorney there'd be no contact, not anger, architecture. Some bridges don't need rebuilding, they need removal. I opened my favorites list and added Mary's number with a star, the same way I mark sockets I reach for most. Family used to mean blood and duty and going last. Now it means people who make the room safer just by standing in it. It means conversations that end without debt. I wrote the word home on a sticky note and tucked it above the RV's speedometer. Not a destination, a way of moving. When I pulled onto Main, the turn signal clicked like a metronome for the life I'm choosing. I didn't look in the rear view to take inventory. I looked ahead to steer. And somewhere past the next mile marker, a new story was waiting to start. The road steadied me. I wanted my hands busy again. A former client called about a remote consulting problem. Control panels glitching, crews losing hours. I said yes, logged in from a diner booth, and walked their tech through the fix, step by step. Later that week, I hosted a Zoom for interns, kids with big eyes and bigger questions, showing them how to troubleshoot without panicking. At night, I drafted posts for a small blog I named Repairing Circuits and Lives, not because I have answers, but because I know good questions. I told stories about bolts you tighten twice and promises you keep once. The first time the site passed 1,000 reads, my inbox filled with the kind of messages that matter. Thanks, man. Needed that. I wasn't chasing applause. I was building a lane where work comes back as steadiness. Turns out the pieces I thought were broken were just waiting to be put to use, and I was the guy to use them. Work brought order. Then the past knocked again, this time in an envelope. My P.O. box held a letter with Ethan's handwriting, the same blocky print from our Little League lineups. I sat in the RV and opened it with the pocket knife I trust. He wrote about envy that started small, new bike, better grades, and grew teeth. He didn't beg. He didn't bargain. He asked for one thing: silence. I won't call. I won't show up. I'll stay out of your way. It wasn't absolution. It was a ceasefire. I let the words run their course without chasing them down side roads. Then I folded the letter once and slid it into a small shoebox where I keep things that don't need daily light. I didn't read it twice. Some closures come with claps. Some come with a quiet latch. I labeled the box in my head, not with forgiveness, but with finality. Then I put it away and reached for the next clean task. The next day earned a gentler rhythm. The farmer's market set up on Main, stalls bright with apples and jars that catch the sun. I wrapped my hands around a paper cup of coffee hot enough to make you pay attention. Mary found me by the honey stand and squinted like she was measuring my sleep. "You look less tired," she teased. "Either that or the lights kind today." We walked the rows, tasted a slice of peach that swore it was August in your mouth, haggled over bread we would have bought anyway. At a table with mason jars and wildflowers, I picked a bunch that looked like sunrise gathered up. No reason offered, none required. Back at the RV, I trimmed the stems with my pocket knife and slipped them into a glass by the window. The cabin filled with a small, clean brightness. No dedication, no plaque. Just a man setting flowers on his own table because his own life deserved them. We sat on the RV step, sharing a bag of kettle chips like teenagers with better knees. The sky over town was a clear, unbossy blue. Mary nudged me with her shoulder and asked it casual, like you ask about weather you hope will hold. "You ever seen Utah stars?" I felt the old reflex, the half-beat of caution, the inventory of reasons to wait. Then I looked up. A plane cut a thin white line across the afternoon, pointing west like a hand-drawn arrow on my map. I could see the empty pins in the cup holder, the road I hadn't said yes to yet. "Let's go," I said, then caught myself and smiled. "Yeah, let's go." 2 words, not dramatic, but they shifted the weight forward. We made a short list: water, boots, fuel, and left the rest to the miles. As the sun slid down the storefront glass, I felt that familiar click inside. Not a door closing, a horizon opening. When I rewind the tape, it plays clean. The text that broke the night, the locks that clicked, the courtroom that listened, the miles that gave me back my breath. What looked like chaos had a pattern I couldn't see then. First secure the ground, safety, then choose who stands on it, belonging, then stand up straight, self-respect, then let the law do its work, justice, then point the wheels toward open sky, freedom, and finally, Build a life that fits in your own two hands, self-realization. My rules are simple now. Clear boundaries, honest words, and love that doesn't require me to disappear. I don't owe explanations to storms I've already walked out of. I owe consistency to the man in the mirror. People ask if I won. Here's the truth. I didn't beat anyone. I beat myself. The part that wanted to rage, to chase, to fold. I chose better. If this hit home, type respect and subscribe. There's more road ahead, and I'll be driving.